Number 10. Bruce Wayne. When Bruce Wayne began training to become the world's greatest detective, he turned to world-famous detective Harvey Harris for tutelage. Not wanting to give away his identity, Bruce created the first Robin suit in order to both disguise himself and show off his legs. Harvey taught Bruce everything he knew about detective work, as well as the finer points of boxing, and allowed the young Robin to accompany him on cases. Bruce, of course, went on to study with various other masters across the world, eventually becoming Batman, one of the most powerful non-meta-human characters in the DC universe. This origin was altered post-Crisis so that the first vigilante identity Bruce would ever adopt was Batman, making this Robin an alternate version of the character. Number 9. Helena Wayne. The daughter of the Batman and Catwoman of Earth 2, Helena Wayne served as Batman's final Robin before witnessing his death in an explosion. She and her universe's Supergirl became stranded on Prime Earth. She adopted the new identity of Helena Bertinelli in order to avoid unwanted attention, and used her knowledge of her father's workings to borrow money from Prime Earth's Bruce Wayne to fund her crime-fighting lifestyle. Although a relatively unremarkable Robin, she eventually adopted a new persona, becoming the Huntress, a fierce and effective vigilante. But as those accomplishments take place after her time as Robin, she is pretty low on this ranking. Number 8. Boyd the Robin Wonder. On Earth C-, all the inhabitants are animal variants of their classic DC Comics counterparts. For example, this universe's version of Batman is called Bat-Mouse, and he fights a clownish pig known as the Porker, which actually was my nickname in college. In a move that surprisingly didn't end with an Eisner Award, they made Robin the Boy Wonder a Robin Wonder named Boyd. While he may seem silly, we do have to assume that he has been trained to be just as effective as his human counterparts. However, being a bird, he does have the ability to fly, which is something very few of the human Robins have ever been able to achieve. Number 7. Stan Lee's Robin. In the early 2000s, DC had Stan Lee come up with alternate versions of some of their most iconic characters. His version of Batman is still a crime fighter, but he is a human-bat hybrid. I wonder how much they had to pay Stan Lee to create Man-Bat all over again. Regardless, in this alternate universe, Robin is a tough street orphan who's working for the villainous Reverend Dark. After failing to assassinate Batman, this version of Robin was convinced to work with the Dark Knight and be a force for good. Except whoops, he was actually working for the villain the whole time and betrayed the superheroes of this world, leading to its destruction by an ultimate evil called the Crisis. Number 6. Matt McGinnis. In a possible future of the DC universe, Bruce Wayne has retired as Batman and Terry McGinnis has taken over the mantle. Terry operated as Batman Beyond for a few years before his little brother Matt McGinnis discovered his identity. Matt began working in Wayne Manor, helping to care for the elderly Wayne, when he came across old training videos of Bruce training Damian Wayne in martial arts. Matt used these videos to train himself to become a capable fighter and eventually became Batman Beyond's Robin. Like the Batman Beyond suit, Matt's suit allows him to fly at great speeds with the aid of rocket boots, an ability none of the mainstream Robins have shown to be capable of, other than a brief period when Damian had superpowers after returning from the dead. Matt was eventually traumatized after an encounter with the Joker and gave up the Robin mantle. Number 5. Carrie Kelley. In the alternate future shown in The Dark Knight Returns, Bruce Wayne has retired after the death of second Robin, Jason Todd. After a decade of retirement, Bruce was unable to help himself and became the Dark Knight again. After being saved by Batman, a young woman named Carrie Kelley was inspired and got herself a Robin suit and was allowed to become the Dark Knight's new sidekick after she helped save his life after his first battle with the mutant leader. Carrie proved to be a capable fighter as well as an adept hacker, but her real strength comes through her leadership abilities, as by the time of the events shown in The Dark Knight Strikes Again, she has become a feared and respected leader of the Dark Knight's gang, the Sons of Batman. She eventually gave up the Robin identity, becoming Catgirl and eventually Batwoman. Number 4. Robin the Toy Wonder. In yet another alternate future, a villain named Zaron forced 15,000 children to witness the execution of their parents on the prison planet of Pluto. One of these children decided to train and get his revenge by taking on the mantle of Batman. This Batman created Robin the Toy Wonder to be his sidekick. This Robin is a robot with Bruce Wayne's childhood personality that this Batman keeps around to prevent himself from getting too grimdark. As a robot made of metal, this Robin is of course much less vulnerable to crowbars than many of the other Robins. He is also an adept hacker and has extendable arms, which I'm pretty sure none of the other main Robins do. Number 3. Rodney the Ape. In Batman Dark Dynasty, we followed 3 different generations of the Waynes coming into conflict with the evil immortal Vandal Savage. While the first issue followed Bruce Wayne's ancestor, a knight named Joshua Wainwright, and the present-day story followed a typical Bruce Wayne Batman, the future storyline follows Bruce's descendant, Helena Wayne, who becomes Batwoman in the year 2500 in New Gotham, a city that floats over the original's ruins. In this future, humans live side by side with intelligent talking apes. One of these apes, Rodney, becomes Batwoman's Robin and helps her defeat Vandal Savage. Rodney is a skilled fighter, but he takes this spot more for a species advantage than anything else. You see, chimpanzees have denser muscle fibers than humans, making them about 4 times stronger than their human counterparts. So, if you're upset that I ranked a chimp higher than Carrie Kelley, don't blame me, blame science. Number 2. Vampire Robin. On Earth 43, Batman was turned into a vampire by Dracula. Although he managed to control his bloodlust for some time, he eventually gave into it, becoming a murderous vampire Batman. He was responsible for the deaths of Dick Grayson's parents, which led the young boy to become a fierce vampire hunter obsessed with taking down this vampirous version of the Caped Crusader. He came close to driving a stake through Batman's heart, but was instead bitten by the Dark Knight. He became this Batman's Robin and possesses all of the powers of a typical vampire, including super strength, speed, and immortality. Number 1. Dick Grayson from The Dark Knight Strikes Again. In Frank Miller's Dark Knight universe, Dick Grayson was taken in by Batman after his parents died in a tragic trapeze act. Batman him both physically and mentally, forcing him to forage for food in the Batcave. Grayson became Robin until he was eventually fired by this universe's Batman for not being able to cut the mustard, as Bruce puts it. This made the former Boy Wonder snap, and he underwent radical gene therapy that gave him the ability to shapeshift and regenerate, making him able to survive any amount of damage as long as some of him was left to regenerate. He became this universe's new Joker and went on to kill Martian Manhunter, Guardian, and the Creeper. He donned his old Robin costume and nearly killed Carrie Kelley before having one final confrontation with Batman. In order to defeat this version of Robin, Batman drops him into molten lava, ensuring that no part of Grayson remains to regenerate.
Number 10. Tris Plover. Tris comes from a pretty dark future where all of humanity, it turns out, is living on a spaceship, destined to find a new home somewhere out in the cosmos to settle. The space vessel she lives on is known as Gotham, and she works as a farmer on the giant vessel. However, she ends up getting pursued by the authorities and decides to join the vigilante Batman. He tells her of the fact that there was a malfunction and their ship is actually now off course. Tris joins him as his Robin, and together the two of them manage to correct the ship's computer, putting them back on a proper course. Think WALL-E kind of, but if it were Batman and Robin teaming up to fix things instead of WALL-E and a reluctant Eve. Unfortunately, despite being a kind of cool apocalyptic future Robin, Tris still turned herself into the authorities in the end and was turned into fertilizer, after she realized that it would take over 300 years for the ship to arrive at their now correctly programmed destination. Yeah, that's gotta be a pretty depressing revelation. Number 9. Earth 2 Robin. The original Earth 2 Robin was an alternate version of Dick Grayson who never became Nightwing but instead continued on with the mantle Robin well into his adulthood. He fought crime alongside the daughter of Batman and Catwoman, Helena Wayne, also known as the Vigilante Huntress. Being that Earth 2 Robin was from the Golden Age, he's got a lot of weird knowledge and skills because, well, Golden Age comics, including medicinal and surgical skills. Thanks, Batman. He also was technically the original Robin despite now being considered an alternate due to a reorganization of the continuity following Crisis on Infinite Earths, and then again during Infinite Crisis, and then again following Flashpoint. Wow, that's a lot of resets. Though this version of Robin wouldn't be around to see all those resets, as despite his long list of skills, he died attempting to protect the newly formed Earth during the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. So he only lives on at this point in our hearts and in our old mags. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more bat lists, I want to give you those bat lists. So be sure to let us know that you like them by clicking that like button, and hey, why not share this list while you're at it? Help us find the people out in the world that also love Robins. Number 8. Robin 89. This alternate version of Robin made his first appearance in issue number 1 of Batman 89, a new limited series that takes place in the Burtonverse. One of my favorite verses. As a nod to the fact that Marlon Wayans was set to play Robin in the Burtonverse before Tim Burton left the Batman films, this version of him is black, which I think is pretty awesome. Initially, Marlon would have played Robin in the sequel, but the team actually decided instead to have him first appear in the third film. You know, the one that never happened, as Joel Schumacher then took over, introducing his own version of Robin in Batman Forever. We haven't seen much of this comic book version of what Marlon Wayans' Robin could have been, but what we did get is to see the mysterious figure who is Robin, likely still named Richard Grayson in this reality, take on Batman near the end of issue number 1 and hold his own against the Dark Knight. And so for that alone, and the fact that I'm really excited for Batman 89, I felt like I should include him. So hopefully you agree with me and you're also excited about Batman 89. Or if you're not excited, hey, let me know in the comments. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, you know what I mean? Number 7. Gotham City Garage Nightwing. Nightwing in this reality is known for fixing up bikes and wearing a leather jacket with no shirt underneath. Sounds pretty sweaty to me. He is recruited to help break into Lex Luthor's compound by Catwoman, and the pair of them are also joined by Kara. His skills here don't just include fighting and acrobatics, but also his driving skills, which are pretty impressive. Aside from that, Nightwing also has his tricked out bike, which adds to his power set. In this reality, he is rivals with Jason Todd, who himself gets his butt whooped by Kara. Nightwing in this reality is different in the sense that he is more selfish than his main continuity counterpart, and is willing to leave others behind in order to save himself. Number 6. Damian Wayne. What would an alternate Robin list be without a few of the main continuity Robins, of which we have a plethora of alternates already, as the role has changed hands throughout the years. I'm not going to list all of the Robins here, so if there's one that you're a huge fan of and I don't list them, please don't be offended, but I am going to mention a few that I just think are the most powerful and deserve to be mentioned, with some powerful Robin alternates from other realities and Elseworlds peppered in the mix there. Damian, of course, being one of those main Robins that I would like to talk to you about. Damian Wayne is another Robin who initially didn't have a problem with killing his opponents. This is due to the fact that he was raised among the League of Assassins, in part training with his mother, Talia al Ghul, herself a masterful and accomplished assassin and fighter. Damian has recently left the Robin mantle and his father's side to seemingly find himself in his own new Robin series. Although the series is called Robin, Damian claims to have turned his back on the Bat and is looking to find out who he really is outside of his father's shadow, turning to his mother for some guidance this time around, and also looking inside himself, which I think, Damian's still pretty young, so that makes a lot of sense to me. Number 5. Deathlock. Deathlock is the Amalgam Universe version of Jason Todd. He is a combination of DC's Jason Todd, who was once known as Robin, Marvel's Midnight, and Marvel's Deathlock. In the Amalgam Universe, however, his name still remains Jason Todd, just to be clear. Jason was caught in an explosion and recovered by the villainous organization Hydra, who healed him and repaired him by turning him into a cyborg, making him into their agent and Deathlock. But prior to this, Jason was already a skilled fighter, albeit somewhat reckless, taking up the mantle of Moonwing when he worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. after Dick had left the mantle and S.H.I.E.L.D. to go attend university. However, Jason would later be dismissed from S.H.I.E.L.D. after making a grievous mistake while on duty, a mistake that even as Deathlock he still blamed his superiors for, confronting both Dick Grayson and S.H.I.E.L.D. director Bruce Wayne during a fight later on. Number 4. Jason Todd. When it comes to Jason Todd, he is powerful because he doesn't often hold back and he doesn't really give up. While he may have trauma that sometimes can leave him vulnerable, his redefinition of the Bat Family moral code means that he's a touch more ruthless than your standard Robin. Okay, maybe a lot more ruthless. At least more ruthless after he left the mantle of Robin and became Red Hood. However, even during his time as Robin, Jason was a determined young man who, even when beaten, would never back down or give up in a fight. Currently, however, Jason is also a masterful sword fighter and weapons expert who is not afraid to kill those who get in his way, which is kind of what gives him an edge, I think, in comparison to some of the other Robins. Number 3. Robin King. Robin King is actually not an alternate version of any of our Robins from the main continuity. Gasp! Instead, Robin King is an alternate version of Bruce Wayne, who was inspired by a Robin's cheerful song at his parents' funeral in this reality. It was the young Bruce Wayne here who killed his parents due to the fact that he was inherently prone to violence and homicidal tendencies, even from a young age. Because this version of Robin is so murderous and dangerous, he could definitely be one of the most powerful Robins out there. Also, if you thought Jason had at times questionable morals or methods, the Robin King truly just blows him out of the water for that. Number 2. Dick Grayson. I think Dick has proven to be the most capable and powerful version of Robin that we've ever seen. This is likely thanks to a combination of Nightwing's personality and years of experience, considering that he was the very first Robin and has been around since the early days of Batman's vigilante career. He's also super flexible. I think he's also the most flexible Robin, which I know y'all might be thinking that doesn't equal power, but trust me, flexibility is hard and it is very powerful, I think. Do not underestimate someone who's very flexible. Dick even proved himself as a good fit as Bruce's heir when he himself took up the cape and cowl, filling in as Batman after he was presumed dead, but was really just MIA. Nightwing brings to the table not only his skills as a fighter and acrobat, but also his sharp wit as a perceptive and smart detective, as well as his forensic skills, or as I said once, his chemist skills. I called him a chemist once and people were like, that's not a thing. But he does have forensic skills, which is chemistry, so I feel like it still kind of goes hand in hand. I defend it. I would say when it comes to all-around Robin power, Nightwing is one of the most balanced, which generally gives him a leg up in comparison to the other Robins, who tend to dominate in a specific area, but usually lack somewhat in another. Basically, they're usually really good at like one or two things, but everything else, they're fluctuating. And I feel like Nightwing is pretty much like here, like he's just really good at a lot of stuff. Number 1. Dragon Slayer. Dragon Slayer is probably the most powerful of the Robins that we've seen so far. He's also definitely the most metal. He comes from the Dark Multiverse, more specifically, the Dark Multiverse Dark Knight's Metal series. He actually sort of has powers as well, coming with an electric guitar that also happens to be an axe. He plays it with a kryptonite pick, using its sound to create sonic blasts and even energy constructs. And okay, yeah, so he doesn't necessarily have powers, but he has a powerful weapon, so I'm gonna count it, because it's like magically powerful. Dragon Slayer's Nightwing, aka Richard Grayson, is definitely the most badass of all the Robins here, and despite his very brief appearance, is in theory the most powerful.
Moving on to number 10 with Talon from Earth 3. Now unless you guys don't know, Earth 3 is the home to an evil Justice League known as the Crime Syndicate of America. On this world, Batman is actually Owlman, and he is also Thomas Wayne Jr., not Bruce Wayne. Now he takes on Dick Grayson just like his regular Earth counterpart, only this Richard Grayson takes on the much more sinister name of Talon. But Talon began a relationship with Duella Dent, who happened to be the daughter of the heroic Jokester on Earth 3. Yes, that is a good guy version of the Joker. He and Duella came to New Earth and joined the Teen Titans during the year after the Infinite Crisis, and together they actually stood against Black Adam during World War III. Number 9. The third Batman on New 52 Earth 2. The Earth 2 introduced in the New 52 is different from the original Earth 2 where the Golden Age characters reside. Instead, this Earth 2 sees Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman pass away in the first invasion of Earth by Steppenwolf and the forces of Apocalypse, who took over the world. Dick in this reality was married to Barbara Gordon, and they even shared a child together before she also passed away. Dick Grayson ended up training with Ted Grant and became this future's third Batman after Thomas Wayne took the mantle alongside his son, who acted as his Robin. He was a much more aggressive and darker version of Dick Grayson, which really worked well when he became the Dark Knight. Hey y'all! If you enjoying this video so far, be sure to whack that like button. It's all you gotta do to let us know we are doing a good job. Thanks so much, nerds. On to number 8, Injustice. Dick Grayson in the Injustice universe was a superhero and sidekick to Batman, just like the original. But Grayson still acted as Batman's original Robin, still led the Titans, and still struck out on his own as Nightwing. He was succeeded by Jason Todd, Tim Tim Drake and eventually Damian Wayne as Robin, but he formed a bond with Damian and he is even seen as Damian's mentor. However, after Damian sides with Superman in Injustice, he accidentally causes the death of Nightwing when he throws his weapon at his head, causing Nightwing to stumble, fall, and land on a rock that breaks his neck. It's honestly quite the shocking turn of events. Now eventually Dick became the successor to Boston Brand as the second Deadman, giving him the ability to fight again from beyond the grave with the powers of flight, intangibility, invisibility, and possession. Number 7. Red Robin from Kingdom Come. In the Kingdom Come story, Superman and the other Justice League members are forced out of retirement to combat a new, dangerous generation of heroes. This future version of Richard Grayson actually became the first ever Red Robin in his middle age, but not as a sidekick to Batman. Instead, he was part of Superman's Justice League. He played a similar role to Batman as part of this league, being like a stealthy hand-to-hand combatant. This version of Grayson also has a daughter with Starfire from the Teen Titans named Mari Grayson, who goes by the hero name Nightstar. Kingdom Come is considered one of the best graphic novels of all time, and I'm glad Richard is a part of it, especially since it brought us the awesome Red Robin costume. Number 6. Cute Batman. I'm sorry I call them Cute Batman, but honestly, look at him, he's kind of adorable. On Earth 42, all the superheroes appear to be these little kid-like versions of their normal counterparts. Here, Dick Grayson has gone on to take up the Batman mantle after this world's Bruce Wayne was killed by a villain from an alternate reality called Super Doom. Now Dick acquired the Multiversity Guidebook, which detailed DC's current 52 universes, and using it, he teamed up with various Batman and helped to bring the heroes of the multiverse together. All the little heroes of this world eventually discovered they were actually androids under the control of the Empty Hand in order to spy on the House of Heroes. Still adorable though. Just saying. Number 5. Robin on regular Earth 2. Now, this Earth 2 is the one where all the Golden Age heroes of DC Comics are situated. In the Golden Age timeline, his history is the same as the original because technically, he is the original. Right? Where things change is what would have been when he reached adulthood. In the diverging timeline of Earth 2, Dick Grayson actually remains the only Robin for his whole career. He grows up keeping the title and actually goes to school to become a lawyer. He takes up the Batman mantle once and comes into conflict with the Joker, but that makes him retire from the Batman name and he continues on performing as the senior partner of the new dynamic duo, which consisted of himself as Robin and Bruce Wayne's daughter Helena as Huntress. And the two took part in the Battle of the Crisis on Infinite Earths, where they unfortunately passed away. Number 4. Nightwing from the New Order. In the year 2028, all-out war between heroes and villains had broke out in the streets of Metropolis. There was countless deaths and destruction caused by the conflict for days, but after Batman passed away in the conflict, Nightwing activated a device in the war-torn streets of Metropolis that shut off or dampened the superpowers of most of the world, believing it was the best cause of action to save humanity from the dangers of superpowered population. Now after this, Dick began a relationship with Starfire from the Teen Titans, and together they had a son named Jake. As time went on, Starfire progressively fell out of love with Dick and resented his cause. One day, after Dick had chosen to lead the New Crusaders division to hunt metahumans, Starfire left Dick without saying a word, forcing him to raise their son alone in Wayne Manor. It turns out Jake is actually a metahuman with superpowers, and Nightwing now has to go against everything he previously stood for to save his son from the world that he actually created. Number 3. Superman. Some of you may not know, but the original Nightwing was actually a hero of Krypton. It's where the name originated, and Superman telling this story to a young Dick Grayson is what inspired him to take on the name Nightwing. But did you know Superman himself took the name? And even before Dick Grayson did it. Yes, Superman Kal-El has been Nightwing twice, in fact. In pre-Crisis, he was the first ever to be called Nightwing in 1963. Now, at this time, he actually had no powers, and he took on the name, while Jimmy Olsen took on the counterpart to this, the first Flamebird. The second time, Superman donned the Nightwing identity on a reformed Krypton in the post-Crisis world, alongside Lois Lane as Flamebird. These two heroes were both Kryptonian legends, and Superman wasn't the only Krypton native to take on the role over the years either. Number 2. Joker. On Earth 31, this version of Dick Grayson never actually became Nightwing. In fact, working under the much more strict mean, and militaristic Bruce Wayne, Dick was even fired from being Robin for incompetence, presumably caused by not getting past the death of his parents. Years later, and this version of Grayson goes a little insane. He goes through an experimental procedure that makes him essentially immortal through cellular regeneration powers, with the side effect of him being driven absolutely bonkers. With his abilities, he couldn't be killed by almost anything. He was attacked with acid, thermite, and C4, and even had his head taken off with no success. He became the second Joker after the original one and took out several retired superheroes, including the Creeper and the Guardian. After attempting to do the same to Catgirl, Batman finally took him down by throwing him into lava and extinguishing all of his cells simultaneously at once. May not be the most beloved Frank Miller story, but it's certainly, an interesting version of Joker. And in at number 1, finally, is Dr. Fate from Flashpoint. In Flashpoint, Dick Grayson was 1/3 of the family acrobatics team called the Flying Graysons that toured with Halley's circus. While touring in Poland, the circus was actually attacked by Amazon soldiers looking to steal Kent Nelson's helmet of fate, the most powerful magical artifact in the world, according to Black Alice. In their escape, Nelson was killed, but Grayson and a few survivors managed to keep the helmet in their possession. The rest of Halley's survivors were killed by the Amazons, leaving only Dick Grayson and the helmet on the run with the ghost of Deadman to protect him. He eventually decided to use the helmet of fate against the Amazons by becoming Dr. Fate, which granted him godlike arcane power, increasing his sorcery. It also grants him elemental control, including pyrokinesis, hydrokinesis, geokinesis, aerokinesis, cosmic awareness, and even precognition.